Hey, Devils fans, this is Ken Daneyko, and you're on Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elias scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed him. Brodeur has got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. Joining me on today's special episode is a player who played his entire 20-year career with the Devils organization, holds the franchise record for most games played, and also penalty minutes, a three-time Stanley Cup champion, has his number retired at the Prudential Center, a member of the Ukrainian Sports Hall of Fame, and is also Bill Spalding's color commentator on MSG. It's Mr. Devil himself, Ken Daneyko. Dano, I had one of your teammates, Bruce Driver, on this show back in February, and now it's great to have you on. How are you doing? The season will be here before we know it.
I'm doing great, Trey. Good to be on with you. And yeah, you had the great Bruja, a longtime teammate and friend, and love the Bruja. He's what it was all about when we started, way back when we went through some of the lean years, but good to be here.
Well, let's get right into it. I know you're a busy man. I listened to your appearance on Spittin' Chicklets, and you shared a story in which you said that you would go around your house and school saying that you would one day reach the NHL. Growing up in Edmonton, Alberta, where did hockey begin for you?
Well, I've told many people, and I'm sure a lot of other players growing up in Canada will say the same, where if you didn't have skates on coming out of your mother's womb, you really had nothing to do. Where I grew up, it was cold. There was a lot of outdoor rinks and ponds. And right from an early age, I had a passion to play the game of hockey. It was my everything. Didn't matter how cold it was out there. My mother would have to get my dad or my brother to come drag me off the ice for dinner, even in freezing temperatures. I just loved to be on the ice and the outdoor rinks. In my early years, 7, 8, 9 years old.
All right, so you were selected 18th overall by the Devils in the 1982 NHL draft. In fact, you were the second pick ever in team history. A lot of people may not know this, but New Jersey didn't even have a team name established at the time. Before we talk about the beginning of your NHL career, what was the process like of getting your name out there in the first place while playing in the WAHL and also the junior hockey in Alberta?
Yeah, well, I played in the Western Hockey League at the time, and I actually started in Spokane, the Spokane Flyers, when I was 16 years old. So I entered the Tier 1 Junior League, the league where you get drafted out of a lot of the time, or college, whatever it may be. But major junior hockey was back in the early 80s the route to go, because you got a little more recognition at the time, and that's changed quite a bit in today's day and age. But not that there's not a ton of junior players drafted, but it's college. It's all over the world now. And back then, the major junior route got you noticed a little bit more, and I was able to play at a young age. But we folded. The team folded a year and a half in. So I played a year and a half in Spokane, 16, and then half year when I had turned 17. And they had a dispersal draft right around Christmas when the team folded, and I went to Seattle. So yes, it was the Western Hockey League, but there was teams in the States as well. And I was one of those guys that played way out west in Seattle, and where I eventually ended up being drafted by the Devils. You're right, they didn't have a team name at the time. And I tell many people, you relied on one scout that would follow you around and go back to management and say, this is our guy. This is the guy I want to pick. And in fact, there was a scout named Bert Marshall who had followed me around apparently. And what I'd heard from Bert is in a beat up old Winnebago, because those guys put on a lot of miles and traveled around just to find certain players and go back to their organization and say, this is the guy, this is our guy, I want to draft him. And you had to get management to believe that and have enough trust and faith in you as a scout that this is your guy. And Bert had watched me for a couple of weeks and at the start of the playoffs when I was playing for the Seattle Breakers in the Western Hockey League, and came back to Jersey and told them I followed him around a couple of weeks. I feel I know his character and his heart, and I was playing pretty well at the time. He says, if he's available at 18, the second pick in the first round, the first year of Devils' existence, he said, I want to take this guy. I believe he's going to play double-digit years for you. And Bert told me this whole story because I only had hearsay way after my career was over. And the Devils said to him at the time, really, we're not going to take Daneyko. We don't know enough about him. He's not ranked there. They had rankings. I wasn't ranked to go in the first round, and I understood that. I didn't believe I was going to go there that high anyway. And Bert, kept pushing and said, take this guy. He will play a long time for you. And the Devils management had said to Bert, are you willing to put your job on the line? And Bert, that's what it took back then. There was no internet. You didn't know much about these players. It was all the eye test, where nowadays they know what you eat, what you sleep, when you sleep, shall I say, what you drink, what you're doing with your life, whatever it may be. It was just talking to them a little bit after a game, whether you're playing junior, college, whatever it may be, and just going back to your and watching what you're all about, and going back to the organization and telling them. And Bert says, looked them in the eye, and he said, I'm willing to put my job on the line. And he told me this story, which I didn't know the extent of it, back in 2013. I hadn't seen him for a long, long time. And I went up to him, gave him a big hug, and said, thanks, Bert, for believing in me. It means the world, because if you didn't believe in me, who knows what would have transpired. And you went out on a limb for a young buck from Western Canada that wasn't ranked where the Devils ended up picking me at 18. But he said, yeah, Kenny, I did look them in the eye, and I told him I'll put my job on the line. I believe in him that much. He's going to play a long time for you. And he said, you made me proud. And I said, Bert, thank you so much, because without your belief, I mean, who knows what would have happened. But he says, well, Kenny ended up playing over 1,400 games, including playoffs. So he says, I'm still scouting to this day. He was scouting for the Carolina Hurricanes when I saw him in 2013. At the time, he's retired since then, when I saw him at the Prudential Center at the draft. And he says, I'm still scouting because of me picking you back then when I went on a limb. And we laughed about it and chuckled. You always do. But in reality, I was just so grateful. And I never underestimate the work that goes into trying to pick players and throughout the organization, and certainly the scouting staff, but in particular back then, because they really had to convince the organization this was the guy. If you weren't, a can't miss prospect or player that's going top three, whatever it may be, but he really pushed for me to go 18, and I wasn't ranked there, and the rest is history. But I never take that for granted. I was so grateful to Bert Marshall.
And 20 years later resulted in 3 Stanley Cups. And now, once again, you're still with the organization as Bill Spalding's color commentator. But I want to talk about your game a little bit more, because you one time described yourself as not the most skilled hockey player, but you still did your job in order to help the team win. So I'm curious, how did you learn to balance out being an overly aggressive player, but at the same time not being a liability on the rink? Where'd you find that middle ground?
Well, first off, I mean, everybody coming out of junior has, offensive ability as defenseman. I mean, I was no different. It's hard to believe when you end up finding a role, and if you even get the opportunity to make the National Hockey League and play for a team. I mean, I was a 70-point guy my last year in juniors. Yes, I had the physicality. That was a big part of it. But I did a little bit of everything back in junior. And you got to find a niche. You have to find something that's going to keep you around. And yes, I was going to get recognized because of my physicality, because I couldn't quite be that offensive guy. Even though early on in my career, I started as a 19-year-old, I was getting some second power play unit time because I came out of the Western League as kind of an all-around player. That was the MO on me, shall I say, was he's tough. He's an all-around player, but a lot of junior kids are that, whether they're forwards, whether they're defensemen. But to go to the best league in the world, it's hard to do what you did in junior. And the biggest thing is to understand, find something that's going to define you, that's going to give you a role. And I was going to make a name for myself being a tough player, being physical, sticking up for teammates, being a real good penalty killer, good defensively. And that's kind of how it transpired. But I always tell everybody Lou Lamoriello kind of defined that, because you see so many players, and I'd already played 3-4 years before Lou came to the organization, but without the speech that he gave me about the orchestra, and I've told it a million times and everybody knows it, where, he'd give me the orchestra speech. Speaking of Bruce Driver, he was the second power play unit guy, and he was injured and for a few games, and I was actually getting on the second power play unit even with Lou his first year, and I got 4 points in 4 games, and I was all excited because you always want to do more. You always want to have a bigger impact. Bruce came back. I got off the power play, and I was a little disappointed. I wore my emotion on my sleeve, and Lou had asked me to come to his office. He knew exactly why I was disappointed, because Bruce came back, and I wasn't on the power play or the second power play unit anymore. And he goes, Kenny, sit down. I liken my team to an orchestra. He says, there's violinists, there's pianists, there's drummers. What category do you think you fall in there? And so many Devils fans, every Devils fan, I believe, has heard this story. But since you're asking me, that was a key moment for me. And he was telling me I was a drummer, and he made sure that I understood. I was a penalty killer. I was a physical player. I was a guy that blocked shots. I was a guy that did the dirty work in the trenches. But we always wanted to do more. And I saw so many players, guys that I played junior against, have a cup of coffee in the National Hockey League that were so talented, so much more skilled than me in junior maybe, but didn't play long and now I understood why after my career was over, that they didn't define their role, and you have to define your role. And as mad as I was at Lou, and we went back and forth, I took it to heart. He didn't care if I ever scored a goal. He was kind of likening me to an offensive lineman. I had a role. And if we're going to make beautiful music, I got to play that drum to a T. And he told me I'd play it a long time if I master that drum. And he was certainly right. But I took that, it's nice to have when you're a young kid, you're full of energy and passion and want to do everything. But Lou kind of, made sure I understood what was going to make me successful, and more importantly, what was going to help the team win. And sure enough, it's exactly what happened. I was able to stay in one organization. Like I said, I didn't want it any other way. I loved New Jersey. We weren't a good team until Lou got here. We were starting to get better just before him, and he had a vision and the architect of our team starting to get better. But I just knew, if he says it, I got to listen. Don't try to do too much. Try to do what you're capable of, and it worked out, like I said, pretty good. But because of that speech, it really defined what my role was, what he expected of me. And like I said, anytime you score a goal, your team gets pumped up. It's an unexpected guy to score or make an offensive play. But he didn't care if I ever scored. It was more about making sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, so that I'm not trying to do too much offensively, which would take away from what was going to make me successful and help the team win. And that was, like I said, protect teammates, play tough. And I had to fight a lot the first 5 years, and I enjoyed that part of the game, believe me. And once I made room for myself, then I was able to, get some respect and reputation, and, didn't have to do it as much. I developed my game that I, become a shutdown defenseman against some top players in the National Hockey League. And that meant the world to me. That was my challenge. Every night, my job in the heart of my career was to make sure the Marilyn Muse and Wayne Gretzky's didn't kill us every night, or the Messiers, as far as offensively. And I took a lot of pride in that.
There's still more in store with Ken Daneyko, but before we continue, I want to tell you guys about a product I use literally every day. So I started taking AG1 because I wanted to be happier. I wanted to be healthier. My body's a temple, so I got to start treating it as such. I drink AG1 before a workout, before I record an episode, before I have long car rides, because Once again, it gives me the energy that I need, and it is super healthy. AG1 is a foundational nutrient supplement that delivers comprehensive nutrients to support whole body health. AG1 replaces your multivitamin, probiotic, and more in one simple drinkable habit. Science-driven formulation of vitamins, probiotics, and whole food source nutrients. AG1 is raising the standard for quality in the supplement category. AG1 helps build your health foundation first. So if a comprehensive solution is what you need for your supplemental routine, then give AG1 a try. Get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL Network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL Network. Check it out. Okay, let's get back to our conversation with Mr. Devil. Take it away once again. So let's talk about humble beginnings for the Devils organization, because I'm curious to know, what was it like trying to establish an identity for this newly formed team in New Jersey? Because like you said early on in the episode, you didn't even know where New Jersey was located when you were first drafted.
Yeah, well, look, we weren't a very good team. I mean, coming over from Colorado Rockies, it was the team, the organization was a little bit of disarray, to say the least. Didn't have a ton of really good players. Had some good veterans that really taught our young guys a lot. Phil Russells, the Don Levers, the Peter McNabbs, God rest his soul, Rich Preston. I could go on down the list, but Aaron Broughton, he was a younger player at the time, but went on to have a good career with us. And all these guys really helped the young players. We were trying to establish something. We were winning 17 games a year, but it was the Mullers, McLeans, Verbeeks, Joe Sorella, Bruce Driver, myself, Willanen came along, and then Sean Burke when we became better. But those guys really guided us and showed us what it was going to take to be pros, to play in the National Hockey League. But yeah, we weren't good. And then, but all of us, a lot of us young guys, and myself included, I mean, I always used to say, we're going to become something someday. I just wanted to be part of the solution. We all did. We all wanted to say, just watch. One day we are going to be a team to be reckoned with. People used to probably laugh at us, media and hockey world is included. And then when we were able to turn the corner in '88 and under Lou Lamoriello's guidance, become a team that made the playoffs and won a few rounds and one game away from the Stanley Cup Finals, our first time around in the playoffs. Then I knew that these lean years were all worth it because we had a good young core. Yeah, Lou had to trade some of those guys along the way to mold the team to his liking. And I was just grateful, certainly, that I wasn't one of those guys traded, because this was the team that gave my chance. It may sound corny at times, but that's the way I was as a kid. I wanted to be a building block for a team that I didn't want to go anywhere else. I didn't care how bad we were in the early years. I was of the belief that we are going to turn the corner, and I want to be a part of that.
And you said that you guys were made fun of a lot by some of your peers, and it took a while to gain the respect. And it kind of leads into my next question. So after losing to the Edmonton Oilers one time, 13-4 in 1983, a player that you mentioned, the great one, Wayne Gretzky, described the organization as a quote-unquote Mickey Mouse organization. It took some time, like you said, but the Devils later became a consistent playoff team. What was it like getting a taste of the playoffs the first few times you went?
Yeah, well, as far as the Gretzky comment, I'm friends with Gretz. I love him. The face of our game, really. I mean, he was right at the time, and he felt bad for his friend and buddy Ron Lowe, who he played with in Edmonton that night. So I was out with a broken leg that night, so I joke we lost 13-4. If I was in, we would have only lost 7-4. That's my
would have knocked their heads off or something like that?
That's what I believe in my mind anyway. But yeah, I mean, I know people and fans weren't too happy about the comments from Gretz at the time, but yeah, we weren't good. That was the reality, and it motivated us, you hope, and that's what it does. And then we became that team in '88 that we talked about, the run, and which was a defining moment for the organization, missed the playoffs the following year. So that's how hard it is to win in this league. But then we continually made the playoffs until we won the cup in '95, and obviously we knew we were getting better. I mean, it was just, we celebrated in '88 like we had won the Stanley Cup, winning the last game in overtime against Chicago on Johnny Mac's overtime goal, and we were just a bunch of young raw kids that, you know, were so emotional, because that was kind of like I mentioned, the defining moment where we did it. We're finally in the playoffs. We're finally playing meaningful hockey games, and that's what we strive to do all along, all the young core, and we got there. And now you always think it's going to be easy along the way, and we hard dose of reality the following year we missed the playoffs. But sometimes you got to take one step back to take 2 steps forward, and we did that and continually made the playoffs, like I said, after missing in '89 and to hoist that cup in '95 and to go through those tough times. And it was amazing. I mean, I thought we'd get there quicker, but it just shows you how hard it is to win the Stanley Cup, how hard it is just to make the playoffs. So there was nothing like it to watch the fans and really put hockey in New Jersey on the map. Winning the ultimate prize, the Stanley Cup in '95, was nothing short of remarkable, and words can't describe it.
So I actually spoke with Bruce about the 1995 championship. You guys were heavy underdogs throughout the playoffs, but were able to prevail against the heavily favored Detroit Red Wings and win the first Stanley Cup in Devils history. What was the feeling like of being a part of the first ever Devils Stanley Cup roster?
Well, yeah, like I said, I mean, even more gratifying for, you know, we took a picture in the Nets locker room. The New Jersey Nets at the time played at the arena as well. Me, Bruce, and Johnny McLean, we'd all played double-digit years with the organization, so we kind of snuck away and took a picture with the cup, the 3 of us holding it over our head, just kind of have our little moment, because we'd been the longest tenured Devils at the time, and that had been through the thick and thin of things, and it just made it that much more gratifying to go through those tough years. And that '95 team had so much character, so, you know, it really was an incredible feeling. That team was tough. That team was just a bunch of guys that worked hard, wanted it bad. Yeah, we were huge underdogs to the Red Wings, rightfully so. They were loaded with talent, but we weren't underdogs in our dressing room. It was just the outside noise. People forgot the year before we were second in the National Hockey League in points to the New York Rangers, who won the President's Trophy, and then we lost that epic 7-game series in double overtime. So even though it was a shortened season, we didn't have a particularly great year. Kind of went into the playoffs, I think, as a 5th seed, but we knew how to turn the switch on. We were just waiting for the playoffs, because we had unfinished business, because we felt we were going to win the cup in '94 as well if we would have beaten the Rangers, because we were the 2 best teams in '94. So '95 kind of we fell under the radar, which was maybe a good thing, and people took us for granted. But we had the same core that was hungry and knew what it took, and learned some lessons and experience. That's what experience means in the playoffs. Is you got to go through tough losses sometimes before you climb the mountaintop. And we went through that incredible series, which was a great series, even though we lost in '94. But that was our learning curve, and then we won the next season. So it was amazing.
So the Devils were controversial because a lot of people were saying that you guys ran a trap defense and it made the games less exciting. However, Bruce told me that the word trap wasn't in your guys' dictionary. How would you respond to the naysayers stating that the trap defense made the game deteriorating?
Oh, I've talked about it too much. It's ridiculous, really. I mean, you play to win. Jacques Lemaire played on the Flying Frenchman. It came from the Montreal Canadiens system, how to defend, how to cut the ice in half. And then I always go, yeah, we never heard the word trap. That was made by the media. Obviously, Jacques never mentioned trap. It was be responsible defensively, cut the ice in half, make sure before you pinch 100% that you're going to get the puck. So, and then counterattack. And Jacques played with the Montreal Canadiens, the great Canadian teams that were winning all these cups that had a ton of skill. Our team had a ton of skill. What people don't realize is we scored a ton of goals. We were always near the top of the league in goals for. We just so balanced out, but nobody mentions that. They think we played a defensive system that didn't score a lot. That was opposite. If you looked into after Lemaire had left even, and everybody talks about the trap in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. 2000 when we won the Stanley Cup, we were second in the league in goals for. 2001 when we lost to Colorado, I believe we were number one in the National Hockey League. Nobody brings that up. Number one in the league during the regular season in goals for. So, like I said, they kept the narrative along the way, but it had changed. But yes, ask any team today. Defense wins championships, goaltending, good structure. Ask the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, this year, that hasn't changed. You got to be able to defend. And we were great at it. So the only thing is it took away from how balanced our four lines were. We had so many good players. Our fourth line, Randy McKay, Bobby Holik, Mike Peluso in 95. McKay had 8 goals in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I don't know what Bobby had, but he had 6 or so in double-digit points, and Peluso scored a couple of goals, meaning and provided the toughness. So, like I said, we did whatever it took to win, but I have all the respect in the world for Jacques Lemaire, Larry Robinson, because these guys knew what they were doing. They had enough rings, didn't have enough fingers for the rings they put on their hands, and they implemented a good structure, and you buy in. But we did score a lot of goals. That's the only difference. I mean, I'll finish with this, and I'm kind of going on a little bit. The Los Angeles Kings, when they beat the New Jersey Devils in 2012, were the lowest scoring team in the National Hockey League. I've never heard anything about defensive hockey back then when they won the Cup. God bless them. They won it. Jonathan Quick was unbelievable, but they were near the bottom. I don't know if the exact lowest, but if you look up the stats, they were an 8th seed who won because they could play defense. They played a good structured game and had great goaltending. And you never hear about, oh, that's boring. They played too defensive. They were, like I said, near the bottom of the league goals for during the regular season. So whatever your team is, whatever your team has, you have to play to an identity to win, whether it's back 30 years ago, whether it's today. And yeah, today's Devils are fast, hungry, and exciting, but they still got to defend if they're going to win a Stanley Cup again one day.
Absolutely. And I think the Carolina Hurricanes kind of showed them in that regards in the second round. But I'm going to put you on the spot. Which cup has the most meaning to you? Because in 1995, that was the first ever cup in franchise history. In 2000, you guys came back down 3-1 to the Flyers in the conference finals. Also, that was Patrik Elias's first Stanley Cup. And then 2003, you had your storybook ending, which was during the Stanley Cup, you were a healthy scratch for the most part, but then you were given the nod to start in Game 7. You guys ended up winning, and that was your final year of playing in the NHL. So I know it's a little difficult of a question, but I just wanted to ask you, when you look back at those 3 Stanley Cups, which one resonates with you the most?
All 5 guys in the Devils organization that were on those 3 Stanley Cups, our core was Stevens and Niedermayer and Brodeur and Sergei Brylin and myself will get asked that question a ton. For me, I give the same answer. They all had a different meaning. They all meant just as much. Winning was everything. That's all we cared about. That's all I cared about. That's all the core group and most of our teams cared about. We'd sacrifice whatever it took to win a Stanley Cup. That's, championships. That's what we believed in. Any good team, that's their mindset. I know it sounds redundant, sounds simplistic, but not everybody buys in, and you have to have more players that buy in to win the ultimate goal. So 95 it was a dream come true. We came so close in 94, and your first cup, a lot of people say, well, that had to be the most exciting. It was a great team. I loved that team and the guys because of the character on that club, but it was a whirlwind of a party. Everything you celebrate, you loved it. It's your first Stanley Cup. I loved it for the fans because, we finally became something in New Jersey. That meant the world to me, to the state. and hockey grew because of it. More kids started to play for sure, and it really grew the game, which was important. But as far as the second one, I really absorbed it more, what it took, the sacrifice, the hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears, how you play together as a team and teammates. All those things really sunk in winning the second time around. And look, a lot of players don't even win one, even that have had great careers or long careers. So to win it the second time was pretty amazing. That team was remarkable, probably our most skilled team. That team was loaded, stacked every which way, defensively, offensively. Obviously, we had the great Marty Brodeur in net as well for all those years. So that certainly gave us some consistency every night, knowing we had a chance to win with one of the greatest goaltenders of all time. But that second one I really absorbed. And then the third one, little different from the standpoint that every athlete's dream to go out on top. Not many do. And for me, you understand where your career's at. You get, I was 39 years old already. I'd played 20 years in the organization. Your role's going to change. It's going to diminish. Young guys come in and push for jobs and everything. So I knew I was getting near the end of my career, but as soon as we won the Stanley Cup and I got back in Game 7, I played 13 games that year in the playoffs. That was plenty. I didn't even, think I was going to get in that last game, and I was so grateful I did. And the late Pat Burns had decided he wanted a little emotion in the game. Game 7's a coin toss, and he knew the fans would be fired up because of my rapport with them over the years, and had surprised me and told me I'm going to be playing Game 7, and I was a little bit shocked, but it was great because it was my last game. And so all of them, like I said, Trey, had a different feel, different meaning, but I knew my career was over then. I was going, can't get any better than this. That's it. So I'm not going to rank one ahead of the other. I'm going to say they all just had a really different meaning for me anyway.
Well, how meaningful was it to see your number hung at the Prudential Center next to some of your notable teammates like Martin Brodeur, who's arguably one of the greatest goalies to ever play the game, Scott Stevens, who was also a game changer, and next to your guys' your jersey numbers are the championship banners, because in the words of the late, great Kobe Bryant, friends can come and go, but banners are forever.
Yeah, I mean, the old saying, they'll never take that away from you. You're a champion, and you accomplished it. It's all about team, and I'm fortunate to have some great teammates along the way. And like I said, we talked at the start of this, I understood my role. I mean, we had Hall of Famer and what I was going to do or try to do to help our team win in any capacity. And then we had the Hall of Famers. I mentioned Marty. I mean, yeah, when you have a goaltender, you know who's going to be in your net for all those years and not worry about, him stopping the puck. He was always going to make the big save at the right time. And then you have Stevens and Niedermayer, first ballot Hall of Famers. I mean, that was our core. And obviously Sergei Brylin, who was a 3-time Cup champion. But and you mentioned the number being retired. Look, to me, the three banners of winning Stanley Cup championships, those are the most important to me. That's all that mattered to me. I love to win. I hated to lose. That's it. That's the bottom line. But it shows me, look, loyalty, integrity shows players coming into the organization that you work hard, you give your heart and soul to a team, to an organization, good things can be bestowed upon you. And for me to get my jersey retired right after Scott Stevens in 2006, the first two to go up, and mine was, I think, 4 or 5 weeks afterwards, I mean, was an honor. Because at times, it's not always just about numbers being retired. I'll always say this is not about just how skilled you are. It's about what you bring to the organization, what you bring to the fans, the dedication. And I know that. I'm realistic where I was at. And yeah, I played a lot of hockey for the New Jersey Devils, all those games, and a long career. But of course, you don't think your number's going to be retired. So that when I got that call that they're going to retire my number. I was overwhelmed, extremely happy, obviously, but it's surreal, really. But like I said, nothing can outdo the 3 Stanley Cup banners and 3 Stanley Cup championships. That's what it was all about to me. But I'm honored, I'm humbled, no question about it, to be up to next to these greats, the Brodeurs, the Stevens, the Eliashes, who just Niedermeyer, who was one of my faves, if not my favorite, just so gifted. It's kind of pretty surreal, like I said, because those guys, all Hall of Famers, and I hope Patrik is one day.
Yeah, we're keeping our fingers crossed for Elias to one day be elected to the Hall of Fame. Okay, last few questions, and I've had some of my fans reach out, and someone wants to know, what is your favorite band of all time?
Favorite band?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I'm an 80s guy, so it's hard to pick one, but Journey, love Journey and the heyday. They're right there. U2 in the 80s, I used to love. I like a variety of music. I used to joke because, on the way to games at times, I would listen to the Bee Gees to get me fired up, like Staying Alive, that song. And I didn't tell people after my career, I did. I didn't want to wreck my rough and tumble reputation, but it used to get me fired up. But they were so good, beautiful voices and everything. And now that my son graduated the Berklee College of Music, and he's a singer, I know a little more about it. But for me, big 80s guy, and those, just to name a few, were some of the bands I liked. I could go on. Foreigner, Styx, you name it. Those are the bands I liked way back then, and I like everything now. I like a variety of music or certain songs.
Did you guys ever request to the production staff to play this song during warm-ups or play this song at this certain aspect of the game? Did you guys really care about the music that was blaring out as you guys were playing?
Well, I didn't really pay attention to that. I mean, obviously some guys did, and maybe some players had mentioned, but Lou ran a tight ship, so I'm sure he was the guy that picked, Lou Lamoriello, that is, picked the team that picked the music that was on the ice during warm-ups. In the dressing room, you always had certain guys that were in control of the music. All I know is when they put Bobby Holik in control, I think one time in the 90s, it was taken out of his hands pretty quick because guys didn't like his choice of music. That's all I remember. But in the room, yeah, you wanted music to get you pumped up. Like you would have thought a mild-mannered guy like Scott Niedermeyer, who was, just a class act and such a gentleman besides being an all-world player. He loved heavy metal. That's what got him going. He wanted heavy metal on in the dressing room. So everybody to each their own, but usually somebody took over. That wasn't me in the dressing room. Whatever music they played, I was so zoned in and crazy before games that whatever they played, they played.
All right. What do you think the next step for a defenseman like Kevin Ball is this upcoming season after losing someone like Ryan Graves? Someone wants to know what's next for somebody like Kevin Ball, maybe Luke Hughes, Shimon Nemets when that time comes, just from you as the former player, as a defenseman, asking you as a analyst now.
I say about any young defenseman, any young player, it doesn't matter the position you play, is consistency. Can you do it 8 out of 10 games? Can you have 8 real good games out of 10? You're not going to be perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. That's part of the game. I know we were so emotional, including myself, watching the games, calling the games. I'm so passionate about it, and the fans. We get on players for having a tough night. Man, thank God there wasn't social media in my day, because I had a lot of tough nights. But you just try to shake that off, and that's the hardest thing to do, I think, for tough defensemen. Don't let it snowball and have a bad week or a month. You have a bad night, shake it off, put it in the rearview mirror, and get right back to being solid. So it's consistency. He's big. They're going to need his physicality. He showed that in the playoffs against the Rangers, where I thought he played a physical, robust style and just be a good, solid defenseman. More penalty killing time he's going to get with Severson, certainly, or Graves certainly gone, as well as Damon Severson. That's part of it. That's in a cap world. You just can't keep everybody, and the young guys have to get an opportunity. You can't just set your lineup with all veterans. That's what makes your organization better. The Devils are one of the better prospect groups in the National Hockey League. We know that. Luke Hughes, I think, can have an impact right away. And the few games in the playoffs, look no further than Game 5, the tough overtime loss where he played 25 minutes, and, man, he looked good. So I think he can be a real impact, different type of defenseman. The way the game's gone, you need puck moves. You need a guy that can skate like him. You know, he reminds me in the mold of a Scott Niedermayer. I don't like to put comparisons or projections on players, but the game, he skates effortless, and it's just beautiful to watch. I've gone with the times. I love that, watching Luke Hughes play, and obviously pretty good pedigree with his brother Quinn, and we all know what Jack Hughes did last year and what our superstar of the team is capable of, and he's going to continue to grow. And Nemitz, you know, he's going to have to earn his spot. He played terrific in Utica last year, in particular the second half of the year. He's going to be a good two-way defenseman, the number 2 overall pick. So I hope he can crack the lineup. Are they going to go through growing pains? Of course. They're kids. They're young. But I expect a lot from Kevin Ball this year. I expect the consistency, the physicality with regularity, and just be a good, solid defenseman. He's 6'6". He's got a great reach. He's tough to get around. Just be a solid guy in your zone and bring that to physicality. I think we're going to see a lot from him this year, and he's excited about it because he's going to get a little more opportunity with some of the veterans moving on, like Graves, like Severson, and like I said, they did a terrific job here in New Jersey, but you just can't keep everybody in today's salary cap world.
All right, last couple of questions. Other than the Stanley Cup, what was your favorite memory as a player?
Oh, so many great memories. I mean, everything. Playing my first game in Madison Square Garden, 1983. A dream come true. Told my mother 10 times a day, I'm going to play in the National Hockey League since I was 7 years old. To fulfill that dream, and my mother couldn't believe it, and she flew out. God rest her soul. She didn't like big cities. She flew out, flew back, said, I don't care if he plays another game. If he didn't tell me once, he told me 10 times a day. And she used to pacify me and say, yeah, but she knew how difficult it was because there's 10 Ken Daneykos in every corner. So for the Devils to draft me, to give me that opportunity, that was an amazing moment, playing my first game. 1988, the game in Chicago. I think I brought it up during our chat here. To make the playoffs for the first time, to kind of do a 360 where we came from, winning 17 games a year, the first few seasons here in New Jersey, to finally making the playoffs, to winning a couple rounds, to going 7 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. That was as special as it gets for us. And if you saw us celebrate, I've seen it many times. We celebrated like we won the cup. We didn't know any better. We were so pumped just to get a chance to play, like I said, meaningful games. So those are two of the memorable moments, certainly. There's just so many, Trey. Obviously, you mentioned and you said other than the Stanley Cups, it was all about winning for me, and that was as memorable as ever. My last game, the fans, just celebrating with the fans. I know it was the Stanley Cup, and you asked me not win a cup, but just the rapport I had with the fans, what they meant to me, the support they gave me through thick and thin, on and off the ice, all that was running through my mind and in my body after I knew this is it. I'm going out on top, and I made sure I banged every pane of glass around the rink to thank the fans in every corner for the support they gave the team and certainly gave me throughout my career.
All right, last question. So we know what the team was like on the rink, but I want to get your perspective as to how things were ran in the front office, because now we got Tom Fitzgerald and a lot of people are loving what he's been doing, but you had the chance to play under Lou Lamoriello, and I had the chance to speak with Cam Jensen last year, and he always said that Lou, he was always strict but fair. So like Cam told stories about how Lou always had his back during the struggles, but was not afraid to tell it as it is. So being a former player and playing within the organization of Lou Lamoriello, I would like to hear your perspective as to how Lou was as a general manager.
Well, I think that's a fair assessment, what Cam said. He was disciplined. He was hard-nosed. As soon as Lou came in, he was an unknown coming from Providence originally. But certain people have leadership. They don't have to say a word. He just commanded respect right away. You could see he was all business. And you didn't want to cross him, for sure. And that's kind of what Lou was. But probably the most loyal man I've ever met. Cam's right. Again, he had your back. He certainly had my back. Nobody had more meetings, I'm sure, throughout their career than I did with Lou Lamoriello in his office. Good, bad, and indifferent. Because everybody knows I wore my emotion on my sleeve. I was a little bit of a wild child on and off the ice. That was me. I was go, go, go. The switch was never turned off. And Lou was tough on me, rightfully so. He had to be sometimes. But again, he was all about winning. He wanted to get the best out of you. Yes, he was disciplined, but I will tell you, people think that if you did something wrong or off the cuffs, no. If he believed you were a big part of this team in winning, he would put up with. That's what I loved, because he probably shouldn't have for a lot of the times. With me anyway, he put up with and would guide you through the difficult times, whatever it may be, because if he believed in you and was loyal, and he certainly believed in me and always had my back. Big reason why we won 3 Stanley Cup championships was Lou Lamoriello, because he knew what it took to win. He commanded respect. He had rules. We didn't always agree with them, but he had his way, and it worked, right? I mean, you win. That's what it's all about.
Awesome, Dano. Where can my listeners and audience find you? We talked basically about everything. I think they already know.
Oh, first off, I want to finish that. I was grateful to my great friend, one of my favorite teammates, Scotty Gomez, because he took some of the pressure off me of the Lou meetings, because he became the whipping boy, and he had more meetings after he came in the league with Lou. Lou was all over Gomer to keep him in line. So I had to tell that little funny story. So I used to give Gomer a big hug, and I still love him to this day. So thanks, Gomer. You took a little of the pressure off me from always going to Lou's office. But so anyway, I had to finish off with that. Where can you find me, you said?
Yes. Well, I think they already know where to find you, MSG and all that, but just throw in your plugs, like in case anyone wants to keep tabs with you throughout the entirety of the season in more ways than one.
I don't even know my handles. At Ken Daneyko MSG on Twitter. I'm on Instagram as well, just Ken Daneyko. You can find me. That's where you find me. More importantly, find me on MSG, where we're calling our great teams games, and we're hoping that we take another step. It was a huge leap from one year to the next for the Devils. Now the expectations are higher. Now teams are going to be prepared for them. So I'm really excited to see what transpires this year. Cautiously optimistic, but it's going to be a lot tougher for this group. But we believe in them, and that's where you can catch us. Let's follow this team. Let's root them on. Let's support them, because they are a fun, exciting team. And now they got a job to do. They got some work ahead of them, because they're not going to sneak up on anybody. Everybody knows how talented they are. Everybody knows how fast they are. Last year, I think they caught a few teams by surprise, but I think this team's ready for that.
Real quick, how does this current Devils team compare to your previous Stanley Cup teams?
Well, I think it's built a little bit differently. I mean, obviously, and as the game's grown, and I'm a believer you can win. Everybody says, I hear the phrase sometimes, it's a copycat league. I don't always necessarily believe that. You can win different ways, because if you look at the last 2 Stanley Cup champions, I think they're kind of polar opposites. There's one common denominator is the will to win, the hunger. That has to be in your DNA, and that's what the Vegas Golden Knights had. The Vegas Golden Knights, to me, were a carbon copy of our 95 team. Carbon copy, deep, strong, 4 lines. That's what our teams had. So that's where more it changes, the more it stays the same come playoff time, because we know the game's transition to puck possession, skating ability, fourth liners chipping in more offensively, all that, where it was more of a defined role in my day. But that Vegas team, they were reminding me, I thought I was looking in the mirror of our 95 team, who I loved and said had such respect for as far as the character. That's what Vegas had. The Colorado Avalanche, who won the previous year, I think today's Devils are more built like that team as far as speed, puck possession. Doesn't mean you don't, come playoff time, you don't have to be physical. You don't have to be competitive. You got to win puck battles. Of course you can do that, because that's why the Avalanche won, but they didn't let the other team have the puck during their playoff run because they were that fast, that skilled. So if you look at those two teams, they kind of won it a little bit differently. Not that Vegas didn't have a ton of talent. They did, because Jack Eichel came into his own and they had star power and Mark Stone and guys like that. But they were more depth, 4 lines. That fourth line was amazing for them, chipping in and the way they played a heavy brand of hockey. That's why they reminded me of my 95 team. So this team, the Devils team, yeah, their puck possession, their speed, their skill. So you play to your identity. And that's what I think this team needs to do. And Fitzgerald's done a terrific job. You're absolutely right. And your team does not have to be set in October. I always tell people that, or opening night. I see in the offseason, well, we need this, we need that, we got to add this. You don't need your team set. Your team is never the same in October as it is in March. Fitzy's smart enough, and he's done a terrific job, and the rest of his staff, to know you make adjustments along the way, how the team's going. Even if you're going well and you're a playoff team, but what do you need to go 4 grueling rounds and win it all? Maybe need to add a piece. So those are the things along the way. Have all the faith and trust in the world with Fitzy. He'll figure out during the season. But everything doesn't have to be set at the start, because by March, your team usually has 3 or 4 different players, whether because of injury, whether because of you needed a little different element to your team. And like I said, the management for the Devils, have done exactly what they said. They wanted the core group to be 21 to 26, lock them up long term. Fitzy has accomplished that. He's added veteran guys like the Palots last year, the Toffoli's, the Hollas, guys that have been in the playoffs, have won championships, certainly with Palat and Toffoli, that can really lend that experience to these young guys as they grow. The Hughes, Heischers, Bratz, Mercers, you name it, Luke Hughes, all these young kids that, want to accomplish something together. And they're going to learn along the way through these veteran guys. So can't say enough. I kind of rambled on there, but Fitzy's done a really good job, and I get to talk to him a lot, and I love his philosophy. And in today's game, you need a little bit of everything, not just, yes, the speed and skill, but just a combination of it all, because you still got to pull back. Fitzy played a long time in the National Hockey League during my era, and what it takes to win it all, and that's the next step, next goal for this Devils group.
Well, thanks for taking the time, Dano, to join me and give some tremendous insight, backstories, you name it. And we're looking forward to listening to you on air on MSG alongside with Bill Spalding.
Thanks for having me, Trey. Yeah, looking forward to October like the rest of the Devils fans. And yeah, I can't wait for the second year with Bill. He's been such a good luck charm in year 1. What a leap from wins and points and where they finished in the standings. So, Bill thinks he's the good luck charm, and maybe he is.
Timely or untimely coincidences. Thank you, Dano.
Take it easy.